The factory director's husband was forced to drink during a business trip and ended up sleeping with a college girl. As soon as he sobered up, he sent me a telegram with a sincere, almost desperate tone. Sarah Quinn, I was drunk and made a mistake, but I gave her money. She won't bother me again. After 7 years of love, I convinced myself it was just a hiccup. Half a year later, William George left for an inspection, and the news of a landslide spread like wildfire. When I rushed to the hospital, I saw him standing outside the ward, looking conflicted. The doctor said Wendy Johnson was 3 months pregnant. She had spent an entire day digging through debris to save others and passed out from exhaustion on the mountain. William took my hand and said with a guilty expression, 3 months ago, her hometown was hit by disaster. She came asking for help. I was drunk. It was just one moment of weakness. Don't worry, she'll never be part of our family. You're the only mistress of this house. Then Wendy Johnson rushed out and dropped to her knees, sobbing, Sister Sarah, please. Just give my baby a chance to live. William looked at me like he expected me to be the bigger person. Sarah, you've always been so reasonable. The child is innocent. I stared at him, then smiled coldly. William George, either divorce me or make her disappear. But he held on to me with reddened eyes, pleading, I can't. I have to take responsibility for her and the baby. Later, Wendy gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. The George family was ecstatic. I calmly took off the wedding watch on my wrist, handed it back to him, turned around, and walked toward a familiar figure in the shadows. I'd kept my promise. I did what you asked of me. Standing outside the family room door, my legs felt like lead. When I pushed the half-open door, I saw my father-in-law and mother-in-law holding a baby each, grinning from ear to ear. Even William, who never smiled, had the gentlest expression I had ever seen. He was touching the baby's nose with his fingertip, making silly noises just to get a laugh. How painfully ironic. They looked like the perfect family. When William saw me, his smile faltered. Ah, you're back. I didn't respond. I stepped into the room quietly. My mother-in-law looked up, and her expression turned cold. You still remember where this house is? How long do you plan to hide at your parents' place before remembering you have a husband? My father-in-law, trying to ease the tension, smiled stiffly. It's good that you're back just in time for the baby's 1-month celebration. As their aunt, you should be helping out. His voice was gentle, but his eyes never left the baby. My mother-in-law's tone softened slightly. The kids don't even have winter coats yet. Give William some money so he can go buy them. Don't worry, as long as you behave, you're still the lady of this house. I nodded numbly. Okay. After the elders left, William walked them out, leaving me alone with Wendy. She looked at me timidly. Sister Sarah, if I did anything wrong, you can hit me or yell at me. Just please don't be mad at Brother William anymore. He only has you in his heart. You've been gone for so long, and he talks about you every day. He even said he'd go bring you back. I glared at her, my voice cold. Cut the act. He gave you more than enough money a year ago, enough to live comfortably for years. So why come back? Why ruin our lives and have his child? Do you think I don't see through you? Her face paled with embarrassment, her act exposed. Suddenly, she slapped the baby in her arms hard. The baby wailed in pain, that piercing cry slicing through the silence. Stunned, I froze. Then she shoved the baby into my arms. The baby thrashed in my grasp, crying even louder. My baby! William burst in and yanked the child away from me. What happened? He cradled the baby protectively, his voice sharp with panic, and his gaze when it fell on me full of anger and disappointment, as if I'd done something unforgivable. Sister Sarah, Wendy sobbed, I just wanted her to hold the baby.
I didn't know she'd treat the child like that.
William's face darkened. Sarah, Wendy and the children will live here from now on. Since you can't tolerate them, move to the old dormitory at the factory for now. I didn't argue. I silently packed a few sets of clothes into an old woven box and left. Looking back at the brightly lit family compound, I sat in the dark, cold dormitory all night. It was better this way. At least I wouldn't have to watch their warm little family parade in front of me. My mind drifted through memories like an endless slideshow. 7 years ago, I gave up the opportunity to work as a technician in the provincial capital just to marry him and stay in this small factory town. That business trip? He was forced to drink by a supplier with hidden motives. Drunk and careless, he slept with a college girl working part-time at the hotel. After he sobered up, he sent me a telegram immediately. The message was short, but his tone was sincere. Sarah Quinn, I was forced to drink and made a mistake after getting drunk, but I paid her off. She'll never bother us again. After 7 years of love, this was our first crisis and I chose to believe him. The second came after the flood. He said Wendy Johnson's hometown was destroyed. She was homeless and desperate and came to him for help. Again, he blamed it on alcohol. My heart broke all over again, but I swallowed the pain and stayed. Then came the landslide during his inspection trip. He barely escaped with his life, and it was Wendy pregnant with his child who clawed through the debris with her bare hands to dig him out. He owed her his life, and now, with a child on the way, William George said he couldn't turn his back on her. When he knelt before me, eyes full of tears, begging for forgiveness, I gave him only 2 choices: divorce me or make her disappear. But William George looked at me and said, with painful clarity, that he would do neither. He wouldn't abandon her, nor could he divorce me. So, his legal wife was forced to retreat like a mistress. I hid at my parents' house, shrinking from the contemptuous looks of my brother and sister-in-law until I couldn't take it anymore and returned. By the dim kerosene light in my dormitory, I wrote the divorce papers and submitted them to the factory office after work. The next morning, a frantic knock pounded on my door. William George burst in, soaked in sweat and rain. Are you out of your mind? Filing for divorce now. I stood quietly by the window, my voice barely audible.
Divorce me, William.
She can have my place. He looked shocked. She doesn't affect us, nothing has to change. We're still husband and wife. He was so desperate, he almost dropped to his knees. At that moment, someone from the compound came rushing in. Deputy Director William. The baby has a 104-degree fever. Wendy asked you to take him to the infirmary now. William stiffened. He glanced between me and the door, panic flickering across his face. Then he muttered, Sarah, I have to go check on the child. The flush of anxiety on his cheeks made something inside me collapse. In his heart, I still came second to Wendy Johnson and that child. I gave him a cold look. Go. The child's the priority, right? He ran off. I sat on the bed, numb, tears streaming silently down my face, my chest aching with betrayal. I swallowed a few pills and went to retrieve my signed divorce form, then returned to the compound to pack. When I opened the door, they weren't there. I figured they were still at the infirmary. But inside the house, everything had changed. My dowry sewing machine was gone. The wedding photo that used to hang above the bed had disappeared. Even my little bookshelf was missing. Just then, the door creaked open. William and Wendy stepped in with the baby. Wendy blinked at me with fake surprise. Sister Sarah Quinn? What are you doing here? Her tone was light, like she was the rightful woman of this house now. I felt my voice tremble. Where's the sewing machine my parents gave me? William handed the baby to her and looked at me apologetically. It was taking up too much space. I moved it to the warehouse at the factory. Wendy added smugly, Brother William was just worried I might bump into it while I'm pregnant. My voice dropped into a growl. William George, you've gone too far. The baby, sensing the tension, burst into loud sobs. William quickly scooped them both up, his face full of guilt and worry. I couldn't stand another second of their domestic scene. I grabbed my things and walked out. He called after me, over and over, but I didn't turn around. I didn't want him to see the tears streaming down my face. The next day, William sent someone to tell me I had to attend a factory family day event. I didn't even bother tying my hair or putting on makeup. When I arrived, the other women whispered behind my back, their eyes raking over me. That's Deputy Director William's original wife? No wonder he moved on. She doesn't even try to look presentable. I walked straight past them with my head held high, pretending I couldn't hear. Wendy Johnson strolled through the crowd, beaming as she clung to William's arm, every inch the picture of a happy wife. His mother paraded the baby around, proudly showing off her new grandchild. Then William walked up to me, gently handing me the baby. Hold him for a while. Don't make it look like something's wrong. He lowered his voice. Don't bring up divorce here. When the kids are older, I'll make her leave. You can't have children, but now you'll have two, both registered under your name. A son and a daughter. Isn't that good enough? His words sliced through me like broken glass. 7 years ago, I destroyed my uterus saving him from a machine accident. He once said it didn't matter if we had kids, she only wanted me. Now he wanted to hand me someone else's children and pretend it was a gift. Just then, the child coughed violently in my arms. His little face turned red, then purple. What's wrong with the child? A worker shouted. Wendy Johnson shoved me aside and yanked the baby from my arms. Sister Sarah Quinn, please don't hurt the baby. All eyes snapped toward me. Did she strangle the child? Someone whispered. I saw her fingers pressing on his neck. How cruel can a woman be? My father-in-law stormed forward and slapped me across the face. You monster. You even went after an innocent child. My ears rang, the world went black, and my body crumpled backward. I vaguely saw William George reach for me, but before he could touch me, the child in Wendy's arms coughed violently and spewed out a mouthful of dark blood right onto my clothes. Wendy wailed. My baby. William George, help him. William froze, his hand still hovering near my waist. Then he snatched the child and ran for the infirmary without looking back. I collapsed on the floor and lost consciousness. When I finally opened my eyes, I was lying in the factory infirmary. A crowd had gathered around the next bed. William, Wendy, my in-laws, all of them hovered around the baby with frantic expressions. No one spared a glance at me until the doctor arrived within 4. William looked back and saw me awake. His face darkened, and he marched over. Sarah Quinn, you went too far this time. I said nothing. I reached into my coat and pulled out the divorce application I'd carried with me like a talisman. Sign it. He grabbed it, barely glanced at the words, scrawled his signature, and tossed both the pen and the papers into the air. Happy now. Then he turned and stormed out. Under the hateful stares of his family, I gathered the scattered documents and left the infirmary. I had no home to return to. I wandered aimlessly into a back alley, the rain soaking through every layer of my clothes. My arms were wrapped around my body, but the cold came from the inside. Well, if it isn't Deputy Director Williams' ex-wife. 3 masked men appeared through the rain, blocking my path. I heard you got dumped. What a shame, such a pretty face. They grinned as they raised their sticks. I turned and ran blindly, screaming for help. As I rounded the corner, I slammed into a bicycle. It was William George. William, help Methery trying to hurt me. I gasped. He frowned. Can you stop causing trouble? The baby's still sick, I need to get back to the infirmary. He pedaled off without another word. The 3 men, seeing no one else around, closed in again. Your man doesn't care about you. Guess we'll have some fun then. One of them raised his stick. I closed my eyes, bracing for the blow. But instead of pain, I heard dull thuds and agonized screams. When I opened my eyes, all 3 were writhing on the ground. A tall figure stood between me and them, rain dripping off his shoulders. It's okay. I'm here, he said softly. Gary Stanton. I could barely believe it. I wanted to thank him, to ask him why he was there, but my chest seized up again. The world spun and went black. When I woke, everything was hazy. The pain in my chest had dulled, but the tightness lingered. Gary was sitting beside me, holding a cup of hot water. When he saw me stir, he smiled, but there were deep shadows under his eyes. You've been out for 3 days, he said gently. Where am I? I tried to sit up, but I had no strength. My place. It's safe here. He helped me sit and held the cup to my lips. As I sipped, memories of the alley, the rain, the fear came rushing back. I started trembling. Don't worry. They can't hurt you now, he said, his voice firm. Wendy Johnson and her cousin paid them to scare you. I found the proof. I stared at him in shock. She hired them? I knew Wendy was cruel, but I never imagined this. How do you know all this? I asked cautiously. I've been watching them for a long time. He stood and pulled a folder from a drawer. The next day, an old Chinese doctor visited and diagnosed me with severe heart trauma. Your heart's been under too much stress, he said. Emotional repression and repeated shocks. He wrote a prescription, and Gary personally prepared the medicine each day. He brought every bowl to my bedside, stayed to make sure I drank it, and adjusted my pillows with quiet care. Slowly, the pain in my chest eased. A week later, I could walk again, though I wasn't ready to go outside. Why are you helping me? I finally asked. Gary put down the medical book he was reading and looked at me. Because I've known you for a long time. His eyes didn't waver. I noticed you the first day you arrived at the factory. Then why didn't you ever say anything? I whispered. Because you were married. And I respected your choice even if it was the wrong one. I knew William George wasn't good enough for you, but it wasn't my decision to make. His words cut deeper than I expected. Tears spilled down my cheeks. William's betrayal. His family's cruelty. Wendy's schemes. Everything I had buried finally surged up. They planned this. From the beginning, Gary said, handing me a photo. It was a photo intimate, undeniably of Wendy Johnson and her so-called cousin. They weren't related. Not even close. The flood had been a lie. There had never been a flood in her hometown. The landslide? Also staged, designed to paint her as a hero. That man had gotten William George drunk on purpose, setting him up to sleep with Wendy. Every word Gary Stanton spoke slammed into my heart like iron, but strangely, I felt relief. It wasn't fate. It wasn't weakness. It was a trap, and both William and I had been pawns. Why are you telling me all this? I asked quietly, wiping away tears as I stared at the stormy sky outside. Because you deserve the truth, Gary said. You've carried blame that never belonged to you. You deserve peace. You deserve a future. His voice was soft, but each word lodged deep in my chest. I'll wait for you, Sarah Quinn, he said gently. Wait for you to heal. To let go. And, if you're willing, I want to be the one to help you start over. I looked into his eyes and saw nothing but sincerity and quiet strength. For the first time in what felt like forever, the ache in my chest lifted, replaced by something warm. Hope. Gary didn't rush me. He gave me time. Days passed, slow and healing, and in that small, quiet house, I began to find myself again. On the third time he asked me if I'd made up my mind, finally nodded. I want to try, I said. I want to live for myself, just once. He smiled. It was the kindest smile I had ever seen. By the time William George returned to the family compound, I was already gone. He assumed I was sulking in the temporary dorm and didn't take it seriously. It wasn't until the third morning, when he barged in and found the room empty, that he realized. A single note was taped to the wall. I'm leaving. Don't look for me. Just 6 words, but they pierced him like a knife. His hands trembled as he crumpled the note, his face pale, sweat dripping from his brow. He rushed to the factory office. Where's Sarah Quinn? Who approved her divorce application? The director slid a paper across the desk. You did, Deputy Director. You signed it yourself. In the infirmary. Don't you remember? Williams snatched the document. His own name, bold and clear. He had signed it in anger, in blindness. No, he muttered. It doesn't count. I need to find her. He searched the factory like a madman. He questioned every worker, checked every corner parks, bookstores, old cafes, anywhere I might have gone. No one had seen me. He even sent a telegram to my parents' home, but they hadn't heard from me either. Wendy Johnson cried to him daily, wailing about the sick child. But he didn't hear her. All he saw was my fading silhouette. Weeks passed. During a factory meeting, someone finally stood up and exposed the truth. Wendy Johnson's cousin had been using William George's name to sabotage factory interests for personal gain. That night, when William returned home, his face was like stone. Who is your cousin? He asked, his voice deathly cold. Wendy clutched the baby and began sobbing. He's just my cousin. He's young and stupid, that's all. Please don't be mad. But she wouldn't meet his eyes. Doubt bloomed in William's mind. Then the child cried again, interrupting his fury. I'll deal with you after I find Sarah, he growled, slamming the door behind him. Days turned into weeks. It was as if I'd vanished from the face of the earth. William began to wither. His cheeks sank in, his beard grew wild, his clothes hung off his body. He neglected his work, forgot to eat, sat in silence staring at the door. One night, he wandered back into the alley where I had been attacked. A little boy ran toward him. "Uncle William, someone asked me to give you this." He handed over a small cloth bag and disappeared into the dark. William opened it with shaking fingers. Inside was a wristwatch, caked in mud, the wedding watch he had once given me. The glass was cracked. The hands were frozen, stopped at the exact hour on that stormy night, the night I had begged him for help and he'd left. He collapsed into the mud, clawing at his hair. Images flashed at me, screams, the rain, his back turning away. "Sarah Quinn didn't fake it," he whispered. Guilt surged through him like a flood. He clutched the broken watch to his chest and sobbed like a child. When he returned home, Wendy was waiting with the baby. "Brother William, where have you been?" "It's so late," he stared at her with lifeless eyes. "If anything happens to Sarah Quinn, I will never forgive myself." Her face froze. Panic flashed in her eyes. "What could happen to her?" "She's just hiding, trying to make you feel guilty." William didn't reply. He shut the door behind him and locked it. From that day on, he became a shell of a man. He ignored Wendy, ignored the child, ignored the world. He sat by the window, staring blankly, clutching that broken watch like a lifeline. At night, people said they could hear him murmuring,
"Sarah Quinn, I'm sorry."
I was wrong. Meanwhile, Gary Stanton's medicine began working. The ache in my chest had dulled, no longer stealing my breath. A week later, Gary's elderly mother came to visit. She brought with her a hand-sewn cotton jacket. "Sarah Quinn, try this on, dear, see if it fits." The kindness in her wrinkled eyes nearly brought me to tears. That same week, the County Public Security Bureau director, an old friend of Gary's, came for dinner. Over warm food, he looked me in the eye and said, "I've known about William George's mistress for a long time. This kind of behavior can't be tolerated." Gary Stanton pulled out a thick folder late at night, his voice low and steady. "These are all the proofs of Wendy Johnson's crimes. She and that fake cousin of hers colluded in embezzlement and fraud. Even the paternity of her child is questionable." I flipped through the documents, photos, receipts, written testimonies. Whispers from the factory echoed in my mind. She had used that child to manipulate William George and leveraged his position for personal gain. "The factory's commendation ceremony is next month," Gary said. "County officials will be there." His voice darkened. "The darkest hour is just before dawn. And for the first time, I saw the light at the end of this tunnel." "I'm done hiding," I said, my voice sharp with purpose. "I'll take back everything that was stolen from me, name, my dignity. I, Sarah Quinn, am not someone to be trampled on." Gary's eyes lit up with something between surprise and admiration. "I'll stand beside you no matter what," he said, gently taking my hand. The next day, he went into town and came back with a cobalt blue dress, elegant in its simplicity. When I tried it on and stood before the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. My pale, weary face had regained its color, and my eyes carried a new gleam. "They might try to smear you," Gary warned. "They may even attack me." I met his gaze. "I'm not afraid anymore. The worst already happened." On the night before the ceremony, I laid out our plan. Witnesses were arranged at the back of the venue, ready to speak once Wendy Johnson cracked. Gary nodded, his eyes glinting with respect. "You're stronger than I imagined." Early morning came, and we walked into the factory side by side. The guard at the gate did a double take before giving me a stunned salute. Workers whispered as we passed, their eyes darting between Gary and me. He leaned in and whispered, "You're the bravest woman I've ever known." Inside the auditorium, the air was thick with tension. William George and Wendy Johnson sat front and center. When we entered, their heads whipped toward us. William's expression was pure shock. Wendy looked like she'd seen a ghost. The room buzzed. "Isn't that Sarah Quinn?" "Didn't she?" William stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly. He rushed at me, panic written all over his face. "Sarah Quinn, where have you been? Why didn't you reach out to me?" He grabbed my wrist. I pulled my hand away, calm and collected. "Deputy Director William, we're divorced. Where I go is no longer your concern." Every word landed like an icicle to his chest. "No," he whispered, his voice breaking. That doesn't count, it was just an anger. You have to come home. He lunged again. Gary stepped between us, his tone clipped and powerful. Please respect yourself, Deputy Director. Sarah Quinn is my friend now. Keep your distance. William's face twisted in fury. Gary Stanton, you opportunistic coward. You preyed on her vulnerability to steal my wife. I stared at him without flinching. You left me to die twice. Gary saved Metwis. Don't talk to me about who deserves who. His face fell. He remembered the rain, the alley, the blood. He remembered not turning back. Then, chaos erupted. Wendy Johnson leapt at me, her face contorted with rage. Get out, she shrieked, clawing at my face. Gary pulled me back. She missed, lost her balance, and fell to the ground. Gary clapped once. The back doors opened. 3 people walked in. I'm Liam Wilson, head of factory security, the lead man announced. I'm the one who reported Wendy Johnson and her partner for corruption. Wendy's face went pale. Liam dropped a stack of papers on the front table. Forgery, misappropriation of funds, bribery, and physical assault. We have evidence receipts, statements, and eyewitnesses. Gasps erupted across the room. Wendy's so-called cousin bolted for the exit, but was tackled by waiting guards. Wendy collapsed to the floor, her legs unable to hold her. You're lying, she screamed, pointing at me. She framed me. Sarah Quinn seduced Gary Stanton and wanted to ruin me. I said nothing. The truth didn't need defending. William stood frozen, staring at Wendy like he didn't recognize her. Slowly, he turned to me, eyes glassy and desperate. Sarah, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I looked at the man I once loved with all my heart and felt nothing.
Not anger, not pain.
Only closure. Gary took my hand in his, warm and steady. We stood tall under the spotlight while the crowd's murmurs shifted from shock to awe. As Wendy was dragged out screaming, William tried to follow, sputtering explanations. But the factory director stepped in. Come with me, Deputy Director, he said coldly. We need to talk. 3 days later, just after sunrise, William showed up at Gary Stanton's doorstep. His face was haggard, eyes bloodshot, clothes disheveled. Sarah Quinn, he whispered, choking on the words. Please forgive me. The child can be sent away. We can start over. William George was on his knees, rain dripping from the edge of his coat, tears carving paths down his unshaven face. I looked at the man I once loved, calmly, steadily. There was no trace of pain in my chest anymore, only a profound sense of closure. You're right about one thing, I said softly. You don't love me anymore. But here's what you didn't expect, I don't love you either. He reached out, trying to grasp the edge of my coat, but Gary Stanton gently stepped between us, placing a quiet hand on William's shoulder. That broken look in William's eyes, once capable of breaking me, now only brought me peace. As he turned to leave, he muttered one final humiliation. The child isn't even mine. The test came back. His voice was hollow. The shame clung to his face like shadow. And with that, he disappeared from my life for good. The factory resumed operations, and in the months that followed, I was appointed to his former position, becoming the first female deputy director in the factory's history. The same workers who once ignored me now smiled, as if I'd always been their leader, their warmth brighter than the winter sun. Life finally settled. I threw myself into work. My technical skills and managerial instincts flourished. And under Gary Stanton's careful care, his steady hands brewing Chinese medicine daily, his eyes always watching me, heart recovered. I no longer needed to carry pills with me. No more panic. No more pain. Because the best medicine isn't chemical. It's peace. It's freedom. It's knowing you've survived. One breezy spring morning, under the apricot blossoms that bloomed near the warehouse, Gary knelt on one knee. He held out a ring, sunlight gleaming off the simple band. Stay with me, he whispered. No more loneliness. I didn't hesitate. My tears flowed freely.
Yes.
With you, never alone again. Our wedding was quiet and intimate, no extravagance, just warmth and sincerity. Every pair of eyes held blessings, and every smile carried genuine joy. His mother, now mine as well, took my hand in hers. Child, she said, voice thick with emotion. This home is your harbor now. A year passed and I discovered I was pregnant. The doctor could barely believe it. My heart had healed so well. He called it a miracle. Gary never left my side. He brewed my medicine each morning, fed me every meal, spoke to the child in my belly as if the baby could already hear his love. When the baby was born, his cry echoed down the hallway like music. For the first time in my life, I felt whole. I felt safe. I felt truly, utterly happy. 5 years later, I passed William George on the street by chance. He had long been stripped of his public office. The child he once thought was as clung to him as they walked through the cold drizzle of winter. His shoulders were hunched. His coat was tattered. He looked twice his age. He didn't dare meet my eyes. He held the hands of 2 children in torn clothes, stumbling as he went. I felt no hate.
No pity.
Only distance. Closure. Gary wrapped his arm around my shoulders, holding me close. Saving you that night, he said, was the best decision I ever made. We walked away hand in hand, our shadows stretching behind us under the amber glow of the setting sun. In those long shadows was the shape of everything we had overcome. Some choices change your life forever. And, at last, I had chosen happiness for me.